board. We just come to see what you guys doing.
The lighting things up a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, 14.
At least you give me something to talk about.
Okay, all right.
Oh, you're sure that?
And I still have to
Yeah,
do that
Monday.
interview on Kaichou already.
When you doing that, tomorrow?
But let's see, possibly. Yeah. Thank you for being here. We have seen quite a few discourses in the media about various issues concerning government policies, the oil and gas industry, environment, and it seems as though many people have different views on this matter, on these matters. Having different views on these matters is not a problem, and I think it takes forward the discourse. But we need to point out when these views are often contradictory. So first of all, it seems as though from the opposition side that all we're engaged in is giving handouts to various groups of people across the country. That is what they're saying. On one hand, they're promising more handouts and even bigger magnitude. And then on the other hand, saying we should not give assistance to people. So on the part-time jobs, they're saying we don't want part-time jobs, shouldn't be doing this. In fact, you're giving too much money to these people compared to what public servants get. So my point is that that is not true when you look at the magnitude of what public servants get that the part-time employees do not get. For example, paid leave and vacation allowance and etc. But we are caught in this issue. Now it is not true. So let me quickly, in about 3 minutes, take you through what we've been engaged on since we assumed office. And I did so extensively at other fora, so we can examine that. First of all, addressing the pandemic. In the last 18 months or so in office, that was the primary task of the government. And you have seen us approach this with a zeal that is unbelievable. And even through the pandemic, when many countries were shut down and public officials refused to go, we saw the president, ministers, many public officials putting themselves at personal risk, still going to the communities. Contrast that with the 5 months period the lockdown, well, not 5 months, maybe about 4 months period that we had under APNA. And look at the result of our management of the COVID pandemic compared to countries that are better resourced than Guyana. We've come out of the pandemic with our economy intact and growing, and not just the oil and gas economy, but the non-oil and gas economy still growing. Many countries have gone into recession or are teetering on the verge of recession. Some countries in the region have shut down totally all economic activities. We did not do so. We kept our country open. We've managed to get about 80% of our adult population vaccinated. We have a functional COVID hospital with over 150 beds now and an ICU section that can accommodate fairly large numbers of people. We can do 5,000 tests per day, upwards from 40 tests per day when we got into office. In 18 months, we've been hard at work doing just that. So the opposition would like you to believe that somehow this government has not been doing anything. In fact, they left a mess from the COVID hospital, which is a corrupt hospital. We don't even know how the contracts were secured over for the land and for everything else. But that's another issue that will come up when the audits are examined in the parliament. Secondly, it takes a while to get projects going. So there are several projects that we had to start because the project pipeline had practically emptied. We had left a lot of the roads, West Coast Road, East Bank Road, a part of the East Bank Road, East Coast Road. Those were implemented by APNM, but nothing new of a major consequence started or planned for. They had started some work with the British because when we got that grant from the British, the Linden to Mabura Road. Nothing else. Since then, in 18 months, we have had to put together a plan that now saw the road from Eccles to Georgetown, a 4-lane road, implemented, not just planned, but constructed, and the contract awarded to go to Diamond, that will be completed by next year. The bridge, which will transform the lives of people on the other side of the river, and would allow us to open up that entire Region 3 for housing, because people will be able to travel any hour of the day or night on a fixed bridge, 4 lanes wide, that would not have to open. It will change the way we approach development in Region 3. That has been awarded, and we went through a process. We went through a public tender, everything else, put together a team of people to negotiate that. We got the best arrangement, that's awarded. And we are now doing the same from Crane to the bridge. That will change the lives of the people. We have awarded the contract that has been languishing since a long time from the Indian grant. Now awarded that contract that will see the Ogle to Eccles bypass being done. By September, again, I'm reminding people, by September, our loan to the Islamic Development Bank to pave the Linden-Soestdijk Highway will go to the board, where before the end of the year, we'll tender the bridge across in Wismar across the river. Already the Mabura to Linden Road has been approved. We're the same thing in Region 6. We're now out to tender for the widening of that road from New Amsterdam to Molson Creek. These are just a few of the projects. On the adaptation side, on drainage and irrigation, to systemically change the flooding pattern, the ability to handle more water. We're now awarded a contract to dredge the Pomeroon, which will make a big difference there. We're working now to upgrade. We've just awarded a 1.3 million contract to major pumping capacity in Region 3, on Canal 1 and the A-line capacity. That will improve the flooded situation there. We have a plan to do B-line and all of these areas. I just met someone from Baggotsville who came to see me, was protesting the day I went into Canal, so I said to come and see me today, and he was concerned about the NDC was going to build one of these pumping capacity on some land that they have with a community center. I assured him that, if we do that, we'll rebuild the community center elsewhere. and so I can go on with Region 5 and 6, what we're doing in these areas to address flooding, because flooding is will be the challenge of this country for the next 100 years to come, with the change in climate and everything else. So we have been busy putting together all of this. The hospitals, we just awarded a contract to an Austrian firm to build a children and maternal hospital. Will start, that will be a massive project right at Oval. And we're working on the 6 other hospitals to be tendered. Well, not to be tendered, but to be awarded now, that we've already selected the sites on. These will transform healthcare in many of the coastal regions. We have similar plans for the hinterland. I can't enumerate everything, but I just don't want this country and people like Mr. Norton to pigeonhole us as though we are just a government running around giving handouts to people. We're a serious government that takes planning seriously and implementation of a master plan seriously. Now, somehow, Mr. Norton says that wherever he goes, we follow. I see that comment, if he goes to Bharrat Jagdeo would follow, and there's something up, something there, concessions. Well, I must confess that in his outreaches, Mr. Norton has been so inconspicuous that I've not even noticed he had gone to these communities. You know, and it's a sad thing when you go into a community that is your stronghold, and you don't even make the media going into that community. My recollection is very different, and it started years ago when sometimes people do this. So they go to a community after the government has made an announcement. After we said we're going to do roads in Berbice, 300 roads, including the people came from Little Africa to the meeting, the outreach, and they raised it, and we said we'll do the road in Little Africa, Little India, Crabwood Creek, Corriverton, 64, Kane, all of the areas coming down, Chesney, Toku, etc. And he then went after and talked about the roads. But the Little Africa alone. And the same thing when we had the outreach in Linden, he programmed his the same day. So I'm not paying too much attention to Mr. Norton and those issues. I think he's looking for relevance, and it's hard for him to find it. And so, so it is not a spur of the moment thing. We're not doing this because Norton has visited any area. This was planned in the budget long before Norton became the leader of the opposition. We set aside $5 billion in the budget for cost of living and production support for people. $5 billion. So when you see help going to riverine, Amerindian and riverine communities, it is because it's money, it's coming from money that was programmed at budget time, long before Norton, through great struggle, when his own party became opposition leader. When you see money going to the fishermen and the other groups, it's coming from those program funds. So when you see the 8 to maybe 10,000, maybe even more people hired for part-time jobs now for government, there is a budgetary allocation already. We had intended since budget time to do this. This is not a spur of the moment thing. It's not spontaneous. There is a master plan being rolled out here. And we've outlined why we need to do this, at least temporarily, until we can get more permanent and better paying jobs in the outlying areas in 210 and the other areas. So I just wanted to make sure that you understand that this government is not just dealing with one issue. So often in this, we see in the newspapers a lot of issues. For example, the GRA matter has been made into a front page story about rental of properties. So Mr. Norton said government is renting to cronies. Since we got back into office, we've cut back on rental of properties. I pointed this out in opposition, that rentals for government buildings from 2014 to 2020 grew by nearly $2 billion per annum. And you didn't need to look very far to find out why. The drug bond, which was a house alone, we were paying $12.5 million, excluding VAT, a month to rent that house. When the government gave the guy 2 months rent in advance, and he bought the property for $25 million. In 2 months, of rental could pay back for the entire property. And we raised it. It never went to public tender. You couldn't even say that it went to public tender. We kept asking, how did you find this person to rent? So Norton, where was Norton all that in that period? He was part of the government. We didn't hear him. I know where he was, but I'm not going to say that here. But since we got back into office, we've been cutting back, trying to move back into government buildings to cut back on rental. And that is why we have argued that with APNU, oil and gas or no oil and gas, we were doomed to fail. We would return back to the old period of the 70s and the 80s. Debt-laden and no development prospects. And why? Is that when you look at the capital budget, as we pointed out already, the capital budget of the country in the 5 years under Jordan and the APNU was less for every one of the 5 years, was lower than 2014. And they had cut the 2014 budget. People forget that. So the money to build roads, schools, hospitals, health centers, drainage and irrigation system, farm to market roads, CD fences, in those 5 years were lower every single year than 2014 budget. But the recurrent expenditure, rentals of building, dietary in government, the maintenance of vehicles, buying new vehicles, all grew by 77% increase in the budget. So that is where the money was going, towards consumption and not capital. And why do you think when we go out now, people complain everywhere we go? All the roads are practically done. All the roads, not only and people forget the period from 2012 to 2015 when they cut the budget, but that is like eight years of neglect in many of these communities. No roads being done and stuff like that. So everyone wants it at once. And I can understand them. They get visibly angry. They say, oh, how is someone else getting the road? And you see this on the outreaches. You see until you talk to people and explain to them, they're visibly angry. So that is the big problem. So coming to the GRA now. Now the GRA, almost all of the $400 million in rental that the GRA pays goes to the National Insurance Scheme. Because the NIS, that building is owned by the NIS. So it's an income to the NIS. And you know, we have to now fix the NIS because the contributions can't, in the long run, when we did the actuarial studies, the contribution can't sustain the benefits. And that is why in the future we'll have to make a large injection into the NIS. Now I saw somebody said that this happened and it was part of an article in the Kaichur News on Boot. And they said, again, repeated, that although the NIS put in the bulk of the money in the bridge, but the ownership of the bridge is owned by Ramru, majority ownership. I sat here, right here, and explained to you the structure of the financing and how the people who have equity, put equity in the bridge, they have not received a cent of dividend as yet. But the debt financing, which is what NIS put in, the debt financing and the preferential shares and the subordinate debt, that those they are getting an 11% return, and that NIS has already gotten over $3 billion in return. This is their most lucrative investment. I gave you numbers here, which you can verify. That if they had invested this money in treasury bills, they'll probably get 1/10 of the return that they invested in the bridge. Because of the structure, they could supply the debt, which are the first call on the revenue of the bridge. I explained that here. So I gave you the numbers. You can go back and verify the numbers. You will see that this is the most lucrative of investment that the NIS has ever made. And so, what did we take the land for? What in the planning process? So in the planning process now, and that's why I want to link this back to planning, we are now building this infrastructure in a way where you come across the bridge, you have a 4-lane road going to Parika, you're already upgrading the road to go to the Wales, to the gas to energy project, you have a bypass into Crane, come across the bridge, you then come in, 12 lanes coming into the city. We said that in the future, to make sure that people from the west, from Region 3, the East Bank, and the East Coast, all have easy, and then Georgetown, all have easy access to the GRA, that along the 4-lane road, which we just started, that is where, in the Ogle area, that is where the new GRA headquarters will be. So people can come easily, they don't have to come into the city. They can come on the highways from Region 3, East Bank, East Coast, and Georgetown easily, and flow straight into that highway, and that was where they will be located. And we have massive amounts of land there at Ogle. The hotels that wanted to go to, that were we need to bring the hotels closer to the city. So the land that was there before, that was for the at Lelendal, that was for the hotel, we now decided that there will be 3 hotels there. And one is the Pasha Global, which has started. The other one is the guy named Edmund Braffett, you know him, he's Guyanese abroad. And then there's one to a Belgian company to put up 3 international hotels there that would employ now about 1,500 to 2,000 Guyanese. So the idea is to put the hotels there around the convention center, and then the GRA goes out a little bit further, which would give easy access to people who have to get the services. Not everyone has to come into the city or through the city. The GR right now, the GR, when it pays the rentals, it goes to the NIS, the bulk of it, because they own the building. So that is the idea. It's not to take away no land from GRA, but the government services have to be done in a manner where they are accessible to the majority of our people, and they should not occupy all the prime properties in the country. You have to utilize those to create other employment opportunities, to build out our hotels. We need 2,000 to 3,000 rooms to host a proper convention. And we can't, every time, look at the World Cup cricket and the World Cup, CPL. We don't have enough accommodation now. We need maybe not these 7 hotels that are being constructed. We need probably about 12 hotels. Because they are about 150 rooms each. And so that is, it was no attempt to deprive GRA. We're very conscious of this. And not understanding this. And then again on the boot, I can come back to that, the boot, but let me go through quickly some of the issues on the oil and gas sector. So I see everyone talking about two issues. The IMF report that came out, which says that we have to be cautious with spending. The pace is, the government should just watch the pace of expansion, that's public spending. But they commended the government on the amendments to the Natural Resources Fund Act, and they said it's transparent, much more transparent now. You would recall the entire, almost the policy forum and some others even protested the amendments. You had people who were saying that this was going to undermine the act because they worked on the last act, especially this policy forum group. Well, now they like to quote the IMF, those same people. Well, now they see exactly what it said. And I've sat here with you and explained to you what happened with the 18 million signing bonus will never happen again because the minister will go to jail if that happens. The law provides for 10-year jail term if they don't report every time they receive from a cent to $100 million. He has to notify the parliament and publish it in the official gazette within 3 months of receipt. That doesn't happen, could go to jail. We pointed out how the formula is a transparent one. The IMF spoke about that. The formula is transparent. We spoke about every bit of public money being spent having to have a parliamentary approval. There is no direct charge on the Natural Resources Fund. And fourthly, now the Minister of Finance doesn't manage the fund any longer. It's managed by a board. And on that board, you have a member selected by the National Assembly and a member from the private sector. In the Jordan bill, it was the Minister of Finance alone who managed that. They have to submit reports to the parliament. Every person in this country will know how much money, even without the report going to parliament, we've collected every year from the oil and gas industry. So I hope that that point gets more publicity too, because too often it's just the negatives. But we said we will not spend a cent until those amendments were passed, and we kept our word on that. So I see now the World Bank also mentioned about the pace of development. But they also mentioned transparency in management, and I've just outlined to you that we've got high marks on that. They spoke about investing in health and education and digital communication and other areas. You see our plan for healthcare, scholarships, free education, all of that being rolled out now. You know, not 100 scholarships and 5 for ministers and their families. But we promised 50,000, 20,000, we probably end up doing 50,000 scholarships. So that's where we're heading, because you build human capacity. That is where we outlined. We did it in our manifesto long before the World Bank came along. and talk about this is the need. We pointed it, this is one of the areas we'll spend in our manifesto. They spoke about reforms to support private sector growth, because in the long run, that is what's going to matter. It is the private investments in agriculture, which we're focusing heavily on by changing the incentive regime, co-investing, putting in the infrastructure. Massive investments in agriculture, in services, the hotels, the clubs, everything else. That will change this country. They talk about greater support for local content. We passed a local content law. Now a lot of people are trying to beat the law, foreign companies. We have a big battle with some of them trying to change the way they incorporate and trying to use legal means to bypass the preferences we have given only to Guyanese. And we have a strong position. You may see us ending up in court with a few of them, but we're not allowing this to happen. Some of them are creating shell companies, getting somebody who'd never been to Ghana for like the last 20 years or so. The grandfather might have been here and then coming in suddenly and helping to incorporate. They're trying to use every single provision. So we have a battle there. And it's only with the support of people who, or locals, would be able to fully realize these benefits. But just think about the carve out that a foreign company, now a oil company or a forestier company, cannot rent any building except from local for offices or for dwelling. That alone. Or can't hire transport like Hertz or the others coming in here. They can't accept from locals. Or provide security services, only locals can do that. Or cleaning services, which they are bringing in people from abroad to do. And that, we estimate that business to be around $700 million per annum, US dollars. That the spin-off benefits to supply, and we have done that. They talk about the stronger measures to deal with oil spill and the environment. And now a lot of people, I see the reports keep saying that the government had an opportunity in the renegotiation, or when the contract came to an end, the permit came to an end, to get a better deal. Now, you can't use an environmental provision. If you go to court on an environmental provision to renegotiate fiscal terms, that's one. But put that aside for the moment. They keep saying that we did a marginal change by getting $5 more per ton. We move it from $45 to $50 per ton of carbon emitted. And we renewed the permit. We missed an opportunity. But what the perspective that they're not saying is that how far we came to the $45. What happened for us to get to the $45? Because LISA 1 permit and LISA 2 permits, these two permits had zero. They had no sum of money for flaring, for a penalty. And so when on the APNU itself, when the flaring problem started, there was no penalty. The company could have flared because the equipment, the compressor is damaged and they're flaring and there is nothing. You can't stop the operations, so they continue flaring and there was no penalty for it. On the first permit, we said, no, hold on a minute. In the new permit in Payara, 6 weeks after we got into office, we said that can't continue. And we then put in place a fine of $45 per ton. You look at many countries in the world, they don't have that. That a fee for flaring based on emission level. Emission level. And we said every day that you flare, you have to pay a fine for the amount flared, and you also, there's another component to the fine. You have to pay us for our share of the gas that you flare. And so it is a dual fine if you read the document carefully. It didn't come from $45 to $50. It went from zero on the APNU to now $50 today per ton. Clear. That's one. Two, we have a no flaring policy. So the World Bank is right. We have a no flaring policy. That's part of it. But because there's flaring only permitted at the commissioning, at the beginning, and limited quantities. And then after that, you can't flare at all. So if you flare now, you have to pay for the externality, for the carbon emitted. So this is the only sector that has a carbon tax, basically. The only sector that has a carbon tax. So that's the first point on the flaring. On oil spills, we move from no capping stop. So now in this arrangement that we have, the yellowtail, we have moved from LISA 1, when there was nothing to really, if you had a spill, you have no capability to address this spill. They'd have to bring in the capping stop from abroad, the things to plug their wells, etc. On the yellowtail permit, they have to have an in-country capping stop. So in case there is a plug blowout or something of that sort, you can deploy it almost immediately. They were opposed to it. They say it costs too much, very costly, and it's modern technology, the latest technology. We insisted you had to have an in-country capability. And you also had to have a subscription with a firm that supplies this in case we need more, that we can deploy it. So that is immediately, we have moved from nothing under the LISA license to this one, where now you have that. We have had provisions now to improve wastewater management. We have had a commitment in the Payara license, which is now across all licenses, that they have to take ownership of their waste from cradle to grave. You can't give it to somebody else. You can't say that's not my responsibility. Once you generate the waste, you have to take responsibility for it. I'm not going to go through all of it, but we have, we have made greater provisions both to deal with flaring and oil spills in our document. On insurance, we have had, there is a commitment now to they have about insurance for $600 million per event, US dollars. We're now looking at the parent guarantee, a combined parent guarantee. The discussions have been around $2 billion, and that's ongoing. And they have $1.3 trillion of the company has assets here. That is the EPGL. So that 1.3 trillion, yes, Ghana dollars. And so this is, we have changed that radically from LISA 2. from the license permits, moving closer and closer to ensuring that we can take care of any activity that would be adverse activity. So people need to look at this. I see a lot from the former head of the EPA. He authorized 25 permissions to drill without an EIA. 25 permits to drill without an EIA. And suddenly he wants, claiming, under the same reason, that it will not have an adverse impact on the environment because it's limited activity. And now he has a different view on the matter. It's all very convenient. So I have seen a lot of these issues. Now coming to the last point, where both the IMF and the World Bank spoke about the pace of development. Now, we hear some opposition saying, give out more handouts, okay, to some people. On the other hand, they're opposed to handouts being given out to like other jobs. They don't want the temporary jobs, they don't want the handouts. We believe it's better to put people to work and to earn some money. Yeah, and these young kids across the country, you see a lot of them turn out and they will perform a useful role. And they will get some money, like $40,000 a month, they can use it to study, we'll provide scholarships to them, and maybe they'll move on to find better jobs. And most of them, the people who are being employed are young people. If you look at the images, you will see they're coming, and many single parents, because they need that help. And we believe we want to put people to work. It's better to do that. Then some people saying, I saw an arrangement where the boot question was being discussed, that we should use our own money instead of going with boot to finance the capital projects. So the opposition wants you to spend more, right? The analyst says on boot, don't do boot. Take your money and finance these projects that you get, so spend more there too, on that equation. And then on the other hand, the IMF and the others saying, slow down the pace of spending. Now this is not new. This is something long before these two reports came out. I told you that there are two issues we are concerned about. The Dutch disease that can harm countries like ours that have windfall, and overheating of the economy. These are two separate things. Often people confuse them. So the Dutch disease has to do with this change in relative prices that structurally makes your other sectors uncompetitive. So even today I saw a cartoon about US dollar earning and the Ghana dollar still weakening. And we have to guard against the dollar strengthening Ghana dollars too quickly, because if it does, it makes your exports uncompetitive. And that is why there is a particular way you have to spend, and often you have to sterilize inflows to have that happen. So it is Dutch disease to avoid that. That's why so great a large focus on diversification, growing the non-oil economy, investing in human capability. That could help you to avoid the Dutch disease, and you don't become like most oil producers, eventually a one-sector economy. And then on the overheating, so we already have a great global inflationary pressures. Everywhere in the world, you see in the US, etc. The view is that if you spend too much too, then you also strengthen those inflationary pressures, and it affects poor people. and in the long run, your cost. And so that is why I said to you, there is a big demand to spend now, to spend on everything. But we have to almost keep the balance while trying to keep the economy not from overheating, but at the same time, building the things that will be crucial to the next stage of development, the power plants, the highways, the schools, the hospitals, the sea defense systems, the drainage and irrigation systems, the farm-to-market roads that will open up, the service industry so that new like hotels and services can grow. Those are crucial investments you have to make, which can't wait forever. So if we go down the route like some of these agencies want, we'd end up and do what Mr. Sanzillo said, park the money, pay off the debt, and don't do anything. Where is the next? How are we gonna then prepare for future growth and expansion when the oil goes? We never do anything. We just take the money, pay off the debt, reduce the fiscal deficit, and save the rest. So that's the conflict. That is what I was talking about. Often it's a conflicting issue. And so these are some of the variables with which we are navigating now in the oil and gas sector. So we see these things, the reason we were going with the boot and the miler and it failed is because we didn't have to put up any money up front, and you will buy power over 20 years, and at the end of the 20 years, then the money, the infrastructure will come to the government for free. So you don't put up upfront money. That's now money coming from our revenue. You just commit to buying power. This is a standard thing that's done around the world. I saw, they said, ultimately the debt becomes that of the government. How does that happen? It's the company's debt. And the same thing with this Sanzillo or whatever. He said the debt becomes that of the country, the company's debt. Now, if I own a company, if I have, and I invest as an individual, I invest in a company that Kwame owns, which is a limited liability company. If I don't give a personal guarantee, which we have not done, and the state has not issued a guarantee for any debt contracted by Exxon, then if that company has to pay back a debt, they don't have recourse to my assets. I don't have to pay back that debt. How would I have to pay back that debt? Because it's a limited liability company. It is only they take the debt, they borrow on the strength of the company. So although I have shares in it, once I don't give a personal guarantee, then my liability is limited to that company. And so this is the issue. So if Exxon doesn't pay back its debt, right? It doesn't pay back its debt. Then how does I don't owe no $9 million. I don't owe $9 million, nor any citizen of this country would owe $9 million. That has to be paid back by the company. So it's the same issue here we are faced with in this explanation. Now, as I said the last time, we're preparing for the auction, but we're still debating the issue of the merits of the state-owned company. And I said we welcome the debate that was taking place in the newspapers about that, the merits of a state company versus the problems, corruption, all of that sort of thing. So that debate is still taking place. I told you about, even if it's a state company, it will not be one where the government will manage. So we are preparing for this. We have had, I've seen an article in Culture and about what will be up. I think they've identified five areas, five things. I don't want to confirm or deny that now, but it's the relinquished areas. And we are working with CGX now on a solution, and they should issue a statement shortly that could possibly see more of the Damara and Bordees blocks being put to the auction. And I expect by today or tomorrow that they will issue a statement. CGX will be issuing a statement on that. So that issue came up the last time. I recall it came up, and I told you there was a position, and I said they had to meet their obligations. And we have had that engagement, and there should be a release soon, but it looks very positive in this regard. That's on the oil and gas side. I see a few things coming in other areas. So the police trailing Mr. Norton. Now, everybody said, I saw the commissioner of police said he doesn't know about it. But I'm trying to find this, if we wanted to covertly trail Mr. Norton, you would have two men riding behind him and just like that. And then, what are you gonna find? I know where he'd be headed next. So I don't want to say publicly where, but we all know. So the thing is that I see a big hullabaloo about police looking at him and stuff. Let me tell you, and you know this, the police in the period when we're in opposition sent the special branch. They had a special branch operative working in my office. You should investigate that. They had a special branch operative. I shouldn't say how, but we knew he was there. So he helped quite a bit. He helped us to put up posters and stuff around the country and to hand out flyers. He did a good job helping us in there because we deployed him to do campaign work. But we knew he was there, the special branch. We didn't say much about it. And that was how depraved they were. We don't have any interest in finding out about and trailing Norton, finding out what Norton is doing. They then placed a camera in front of Freedom House and with special feeds going to political people. Not being a set, the feed from that camera was not just going to be monitored regularly, it was monitored elsewhere. The camera may still be there in front of Freedom House. That is what they did. It didn't help them much. It didn't help them much. And so now I see on the rigging side, the same people who were at the center of the rigging controversy at the GCOM, suddenly the ones who want a review. And I think the people are right to say, what are you going to review? Now, what are you going to review now? You have to review a report from the CEO. So you're going to take Lowenfield, who the world knows, see what the CCJ said about Lowenfield. Every CARICOM, the CARICOM mission, the international community, the guy who tried to disenfranchise on his own 175,000 PVP supporters. on his own by certifying an election and numbers that he knew were wrong because he had the original statements of poll, which he supplied to the Chief Justice, was prepared to call elections on that basis. The same person who got, as I said before, 200 acres of land at Millie's hideout when nobody, the people in Linden couldn't get a quarter of an acre to build a house on. And you're going to ask him to do a report. Now, he's already gone. Who's going to prepare this report? And the other would-be riggers are out too. And they're before the court. What are you going to ask him to do? Prepare a report to say he did a great job and review that? It's nonsense. It's before the court now. And then trying to link this review with support for the amendment of the ROPA. Now, clearly they don't want the Representation of People Act to be amended, even having gone through a public process, and everybody recognizes now that we have to put in place arrangements in the Representation of People Act to avoid some of the things we've had. That is publishing statements of poll before they start counting, and getting a manual for the elections months before and publishing it so that every Guyanese will know what's going on. And then determining polling places, not the night before the elections, so people know this before, weeks before the elections, where they should vote. All of these things they used to like to keep within the CEO making these decisions. That's why when he told Mingo to tell the people not to put those documents in the boxes, when the whole country, the manual said, or they told all the presiding officers to put the documents in the boxes, on East Coast, Mingo told the people to give it to him, and then made an issue where are the documents. But they were told by Mingo not to put them in the boxes, which they did for the entire country. It's transparent. Vincent Alexander and the others calling for a review. It's transparent about why they want it. They just want to kill any, and linking it to ROPA, they just want to kill any opportunity to improve the framework for holding elections. So now they're talking about cleansing the list. That's their new word, cleansing the list. Well, removing people who constitutionally have a right, as the Chief Justice ruled, to be on the list, that's not cleansing. Cleansing can only deal with people who died and shouldn't be on the list. That is the cleansing. But you can't say cleansing the list means if you go to a house, and you don't find a man there, but he's been on the original list, and he's living abroad for 3 months, you can't remove him from the list because the Constitution now was changed.
Just to confirm.
The Constitution was changed to say that would be illegal.
Mobile.
Then like you got in a timer there, right? Okay. No problem. So I'm not going to go another hour because I have some more coffee. So this is the issue. They want to cleanse, meaning remove people unconstitutionally. But this is, ACTO's never really paid much attention to Constitution, etc. Now, Mr. Norton wants to give subsidies to bring down the price of gas. Could someone ask him to explain how that will be done? So the government will have to buy this gas cheaper. They're already saying we shouldn't be spending all of this money because the economy could overheat. The World Bank, IMF, etc. We should not be spending much more. But you want subsidy now. We removed the 50% tax. But you can't explain how. It is this sort of almost cake shop kind of approach to economics that will harm us. if people just say things, oh, the government should have gotten more from the deal, but can't tell you how, etc. Just going after that sort of thing. The WPA has re-emerged from the grave, and now they want a political solution for Ghana. They re-emerged from the grave. I saw a letter, an article by Gamara Waves, and I hope that you read the last paragraph of that article. It lists all the things that the PDP has done in the last year to ensure that Walter Rodney, who meant so much to this country, people don't even realize that would have his rightful place in our records and our history. And just read that last paragraph and you will see about his books. Now compulsory reading in the school, we're renaming the archive. It was Walter Rodney, they have to remove that. With the WPA as part of the coalition, we allow that to happen. We put it back in place. We changed the death certificate now, so no longer will it be death by misadventure. He was assassinated. All of his works are now placed in archives or in different universities around the world. So the WPA betrayed Walter Rodney. They quote Walter Rodney working towards a solution and now talk about conveniently. When they were in the coalition, they led, you saw in Parliament when we wanted to debate that issue, the position that they took and throughout their entire period. So these are just some of the things I may want to look at some other things as we go along. Right.
Promoting Dr. Jagdeo, what is CGX getting in exchange for putting up parts of Demerara and Berbice blocks up for auction? If that's, you said they're putting up part of the Demerara and Berbice blocks up.
No. I said we have had discussion and we're working on a solution that you will see announced either today or tomorrow that could result in a larger portion of those already relinquished blocks going to the auction in September. They're not doing this on their own. That is the county. That is what I said.
So, okay, are they going to get, once you settle this, an extension to the deadline for their work programs?
No, right now we have not discussed any extension on any other matter.
So why are they putting up more?
Well, I didn't want to discuss because they are a publicly traded company and the release is not out. After that release is out, you can then call me and I'll give you details.
But just to add to Kimon's questions or Kayla Robert News, what is taking place is in keeping with the relinquishment provisions of the Berbice and Demerara block because they did not commit to the work program.
Yeah. So the thing is that there is nothing that is going to run afoul of those requirements. I can deal with that.
Mr. Jagdeo, clarification. Here we have the question. In your opening statement, you mentioned, you spoke about economic growth Ghana is experiencing apart from other countries, and you spoke specifically of the non-oil economy growing as well. Outside of the construction sector, could you shed some light on which specific sectors are growing, what performance here?
Yeah. Well, all you have to do is to look at the report of the Minister of Finance when he presented the budget, and it will tell you sector and percentage growth last year, the projections now. And now, so what will happen is that you'll have a half-year report. So we have seen growth in several sectors. So we anticipate we can probably, the target will be met before the end. loses rainfall in some areas, but non-oil growth is crucial. What I'm talking about, the policy has to support the growth of the non-oil sector. And that is why we're putting so much emphasis on food security, agriculture, on mining. We've now removed the tributary tax totally. So Mr. Jordan wrote a letter saying the miners should be grateful because he reduced the tributary tax from 20% to 10%. Now, in 2014, the tributary tax was 10%. He took it up to 20%, and then a year later reduced it after we complained about it, and now he takes credit for it. Well, this tributary tax is paid for mainly the workers in the industry. And a lot of the workers, they're not going to work with people who are collecting the taxes. So it was affecting the employment situation in the mining sector. So this will bring a huge relief to people at the bottom. And then we also had promised in the election period to take the tax back. It was 2%, the final tax. So APNU had put in a slide, took it to 28%. And then when we, like a regular corporate tax, and then after the battles in the opposition, they brought it down back, but put a sliding scale in. So right now the miners were paying, based on the price of gold, 3.5%. So that will be reduced to 2.5%, which allows incentives back into the mining sector of about $1.4 billion. That combined with the removal of the taxes on machinery and equipment has helped a lot, but because of the rainfall, the roads are, there are about $2.2 billion of roads awarded already, but they can't start because this year we have not practically had a dry season. So we are losing infrastructure rapidly in these areas. The roads are impassable so that is affecting mining and the flooding. Notwithstanding, we believe that because of these measures that we've put in place, that the mining sector will come out of this period in a very vibrant way.
Kiana Hoover, just 3 questions, sir. I want to break it up into 3 topics. National development agenda for oil and gas, audits, and the contract as it relates to clawing back value. And I'll go with the last one. The government has been able to claw back value in terms of the loopholes that you have in the statute block PSA with the local content legislation, for example. So I have a 2-part question on that. Is government currently considering any other means to claw back value outside of what you've done with local content? And what are you doing to rectify those provisions that impinge on our sovereignty in the contract? So that's that first aspect. You want to deal with that before I move on to the audits?
All right. It's a very, very specific question. So what else are we doing to claw back value? There are 2 things that we spoke of in opposition when we said that we did not want to get caught up in a contentious discussion now on renegotiation. 1 was the local content, and 2, that was the gas to energy project. We said in opposition, we supported this. We recognized that the only way we can decarbonize, reduce our energy footprint in a short term, and also maybe not double but triple our output of electricity, is utilizing gas as a transitional fuel. Now, what is interesting is that I told you before that before COP26, the entire world, the developed world in particular, was saying You can't use the gas as transitional energy. Now that has changed with Ukraine. In fact, not only gas that they're urging people to produce more of, they're now urging countries to produce more crude oil, pump more. So the developed world is very convenient. There is a Mo Farah from Africa, one of the biggest investors in Africa, and Mary Robinson, who is the president of Ireland. They have recently issued a call that Africa must be allowed to use its gas to generate power as a transition to net zero. A lot of people who sit in the developed world are saying, no, Africa must not do this. So the African continent wants this stuff. Because they have so many people without power even. They don't have people without power. We can't keep people in that state forever, poor and without power. And this is the only means that Africa has a large amount of gas resource. That they can do so, getting power to them in a cost-effective way in the near term. So you should follow that debate that's going on. So we made it clear. So a lot of people now think, oh, why did the government move on the gas to energy project so quickly and all of that? We said this in opposition. We wanted to go this route. We were going to go this route. In fact, we were arguing why wasn't the government moving it along fast enough in 2016, because from 2016, they could have selected the site. And you know the whole issue about site selection and the corruption involved. So I'm not going to go back to that. So gas, that was the second way we said we'd claw back value. Now we're about to wrap up the negotiations for the gas to energy project. So the request for proposal has gone to the 9 pre-qualified companies. They will, by the end of July, we will have the proposals from them, the 9 pre-qualified companies. That is to build the power plant and the NGL facility. Then we are going out to tender in a matter of weeks for a project management group, the international project management group that will manage the contract on our behalf to see that the quality is maintained and that it comes in on budget and on time. Because we don't have that capability. Even at GPL, we had to get a foreign company to advise. It's a new kind, it's a combined cycle steam power plant and stuff, which is more stable. So we'll go out thereafter for the project management team to oversee this project. For us, that's on our behalf. Now, in the negotiations on the terms of the contract, as we have already said, there is an option that, well, the pipeline will be funded from cost oil, and we will have to repay that over 20 years. That's the repayment over 20 years. The gas is free. So the gas will be free. Now this is crucial for us. The gas coming in on the pipeline will be free. And that is one of the things we were arguing for from the beginning. So we will, if you look at the cost of the pipeline, say over 20 years, and look at cents per kilowatt hour, right? Normally you buy fuel, but since we're bringing in the pipeline, we're bringing gas that's free, we have to then see what the pipeline costs to build, because the gas and if the pipeline cost will become your cost of fuel, putting it simply. that just adds about 1.6 cents per kilowatt hour. Right now, we're spending about 14 cents per kilowatt hour on fuel alone at GPL. So since the gas is free, but you're paying for the pipeline, well, that is the fuel cost basically to bring it. And then, that's only 50 million cubic, but we're paying back for the whole pipeline at about 1.6 cents per kilowatt hour, compared to 14 cents now. Just imagine when we bring in the additional 30 million cubic, but 80 million, because the pipeline is sized to bring in 130 million. So we are paying back for the pipeline just by adding 1.6. There will be no escalation. So in 20 years, we can fix the price of electricity without any escalation. And so that is on the pipeline side. Then on the NGL, there's an option, the same principle would obtain if GPA, they fund the NGL facility. Right now, we have an option of owning both the power plant and the NGL facility, which we are more likely to pursue. So it's the numbers, when you see the detail, I don't want to give too much numbers, but the numbers, we could end up, and we're using like about $1 billion to the pipeline now. That will come, the adjustment will be made if it goes higher or lower, because we still have to go to tender, and we may well come in below the figure. We're using just planning figures now. So we think that we could have, when you pay back for the NGL facility, you pay back for the pipeline, and the power plant, you can generate power at about just over maybe 5 to 6 cents per kilowatt hour, maybe even more, compared to 30 cents per kilowatt hour we're selling now. That's why we said we can sell at 15 cents, half the price. Then what happens also is that this excludes the liquids we're getting, because we're paying back everything for the pipeline and the NGL facility through the power at 5.5 cents per kilowatt hour or so, maybe just over 5 cents. We're looking at that. So what happens is that we will have, maybe in today's terms, if you look at the cooking gas that we'll get and the other NGL from drying the gas, creating lean gas, we will be able to sell that too and get the money. So we anticipate probably maybe 70 to 100 and something million dollars a year from selling that at current prices. That will come to the government.
And there's the second part of the question, sir.
So that's where those are the two things. So this project is going to be a great project for the country. It would help us to stabilize power, supply more power, cheaper power, supply cooking gas to the country, reduce the price of that, and create the basis for the industrialization of that whole West Coast. Because remember, the additional gas coming in would be used for other types of factories. And that is why we believe it's a great project for the country. And as you see, the numbers are all. The shareholders, Exxon and the others realized, we made it clear the first meeting we had, this was the way the country will get back benefits as the clawback, what we mentioned. There may be other areas. On the sovereignty provisions, right now we don't act as though, if you're talking about the issues about restricting the parliament from on the tax side, if that's what you meant on the sovereignty provision, it just says if the parliament does it, the state will have to, the government will have to just compensate. If you charge them more, you have to pay the taxes, you gotta pay it for them, if they charge more taxes.
If you put any law in place, it
Yes,
affects
law,
economics.
right, exactly, and that is mainly on the fiscal side. And so it's a fiscal side, it's not so much sovereignty, it's a stabilization clause on the fiscal side, not a sovereignty, because they can't. On the sovereignty side, it's a bigger meaning to sovereignty. But people can characterize it however they wish.
So there's currently no,
No, because that will change when we deal with the new model PSAs. All of these arrangements will change.
okay, so to the second aspect,
Yes.
that I wanted to talk about, which was audits. The government, gave, a consortium of local and international auditors 4 months to conduct the, audit of Exxon's bills, which total about $9 billion US. Some industry stakeholders are saying that one, this is not, enough time to properly go through, those bills, and with that in mind, I'd like to ask.
So you are saying 4 months for me looked a little short too. And I'll make sure, I don't know where the 4 months came in from, maybe in the Ministry of Natural Resources, they have a particular explanation for that, why 4 months. But I don't see it as a hindrance now. If they require 6 months, a year, we will accede to that request. So the ministry, I did not look through all the tender documents, but we can find out why the 4 months. But if it becomes an obstacle for them to properly do their work, which is what we want, then that can be changed.
Okay, also on the audit, sir, several countries have, encountered issues when it comes to not specifically outlining what is non-cost recoverable. Do you know if because in our PSA, we start with the sample law, there's nothing there that says royalty is not recoverable. Do you have any guarantee that this is not going to be recovered? Or are you awaiting the audit to ascertain if that is the case?
Yes, the thing is that the lawyers have to do it. I don't want to venture public positions that I may have to walk back at some point in time, so I should be a bit more cautious on this. Because on other matters, we've had some contention at the GRA. And so they said, for example, that they're entitled to a number of vehicles, apply for 20 four-wheel drives to bring in fancy vehicle. And we said, you're gonna pay the taxes. You're not entitled to that under the PSA. So we refused it. And so we've had contention. They're insisting they got it, and we said no. We said you can rent from locals too. And if you want to, you should pay the taxes. Right? You can't get this duty free. So those sorts of things on those matters, I would prefer if the auditors and the tax people lead on those charges, not the politicians. Because sometimes you say something that the other side could then use as a signal when in discussions with the revenue authority, etc.
Okay, and finally, sir, on the national development agenda, two things. One, we're seeing specifically from Hess Corporation that almost every quarter, the head of the company, John Hess, speaks a lot about the input the Stabler Block partners have in the national development of Guyana. Why isn't the government more forthcoming about the role that the companies are playing in our national agenda, and what really is their role when it comes to that? Because Hess has said, one, that they've connected the government on on the health side with Mount Sinai. They also connected the government with Michael Porter to help us develop this sort of national agenda that we're now implementing. And secondly, in terms of information flow, when can we see the return of cabinet press briefings?
Okay.
So.
So on this issue, it has been concern of mine too about these public statements from these sources. Porter came here in the period before the elections. He was doing some stuff with APNU, working on a national development strategy they were talking about, and a competition strategy. So it surfaced just before the elections, and we said, first of all, we don't think it should happen now. You want to have some discussions with us. So we did not participate in those discussions. I don't know, apparently APNU did. And furthermore, a lot of the work that they were talking about, when we looked at what they wanted to discuss, we said the PPP had already done. And we referred them to the National Competitiveness Strategy that we had launched and were implementing several years before that is published. And when we look at what they were suggesting, it was almost replicating a lot of those issues. So the government changed, and we had the first meeting, and we said, we don't need help on a national development strategy. We do not need any help on a national development strategy by the individual, because I think they were hired by Mr. Hess. That we had outlined in our manifesto a course of action. They said they reviewed that course of action and it aligned with their thinking. So we had reviewed without any input from them. We had put out a course of action, how we wanted to spend all resources, which is outlined, and our approach back to infrastructure, human capacity building, and all of that. So we then said, how could we use, because Mr. Porter has enormous skills, and he has connections, and you have a bright group of technical people. So if we didn't need the help on the national, in doing a national development strategy, because we knew where we wanted to go, how could we use this skill, the group here, to assist us in the transformation agenda? So one of the first things that we said we wanted to do, we wanted to make the experience of the citizen with the public a building permit. And how can we then, we have to discuss now, how can we shorten this without violating our planning rules and transparency? So we want to improve the citizens' interaction with the government. When they come in, they need a building permit now, because right now, you have to rush to the city council, then wait for months. There is no, often it sits on someone's desk, almost like a one-stop shop. There's several areas, for example, in the deeds registry, in a whole ton of old redundant laws on our books that can be modernized. So that is what they're working with us on now, like a group now, but not on a national development strategy, but assisting us in these areas At some point in time, the government will then take these reports and then move on them to speed up or improve the way government functions in relation to servicing people. So that is what has happened. Mr. Hess is very influential, and I think he was sitting on the board of Mount Sinai. So Mount Sinai has come here with a huge team. They met all our health sector professionals, and they're looking at helping us to improve the services that we have. We now deliver on the health side through planning, through ensuring that our procedures are accurate, review of the Georgetown Hospital, etc. Mr. Hess is paying for a substantial part of that. Doesn't come from cost oil. He is gonna pay for a substantial part of that assistance, the technical assistance of the health sector. So we can work as our partners there on the quality side. On the other hand, we are building out the infrastructure. I told you about the hospitals we are building. We're working not just with VAMID, possibly the Chinese, but also the IDB for the hinterland and some other hospitals for Amsterdam and the Linden Hospital, Georgetown Hospital with the Indians on West Demerara, possibly Barticus. This is that's what we're working on. So that is their involvement. So Mr. Hess has been very helpful on the health side. They've been on assisting with the Mount Sinai and helping to finance their entry here as a partner on quality side. But that's not coming from Costa. And then Mr. Porter is not working on a national development strategy for us. The group is working to help us improve services. And again, we're not paying for that, nor is it coming from Costa.
And the last part, sir, will ask you about the return of a cabinet president.
The president, you should ask the president.
Samuel Subnagan here. Dr. Jagdeo, can you update us on plans to serve ecosystem services? I think the movement was made to sell 8 million carbon credits.
Okay.
And I'm sure you were aware of the comments made by U.S. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries that the U.S. will not tolerate racism and inequality in Ghana, casting blame on your government, your council.
Okay, on the ecosystem services, as you've seen, quite a bit has been written about where we are, the LCDS. What we envisaged would have been a short process of consultation. Has now taken a much longer time, but we wanted it to be a thorough process. And that is why we've gone across the country, every region, taking that message there. And the message is very clear. We have had the documents, simplified documents, translated into, I think it's 9 Amerindian languages, circulated there. We've had engagements with the university, with different interest groups, locally and abroad. So right now, at the last steering committee meeting, there was an agreement that we will now document every issue that was raised, every concern, every suggestion, and we'll try as far as possible to incorporate those in the document, the LCDS, as we move to finalize it. We're hoping to finalize this document in a matter of weeks, and then we plan to table it in the National Assembly. So that is where we are. Now, not every comment we've received we can accommodate, but we'll be committed to giving explanations why we can't include some suggestions versus the inclusion of others. So that is where we are now. We went out to tender for the sale of the ecosystem, well, more forest carbon so far. You would recall that prior to that, since we got into office, we had approached the LEAF Arts, the Architecture for Red Plush transaction, and we ultimately got our credits listed here, proposal approved by ART, and then they've been in the process of verifying our credits. So this is like an architecture that gives quality to your product. Our product is very strong because, as I said before, we have one of few countries in the world that has had a robust MRV system for 10 years, tracking any change in forest carbon. So our forest carbon is high quality. And having done that, preparing the market and the credits, the certification of those credits so that they have value, we went out to tender and we received several proposals. So those proposals are being assessed, but the president made a commitment that no, we're not going to conclude any arrangement until we conclude the LCDS. So we are awaiting the conclusion of the LCDS. It's been delayed a while, but because we're doing more consultation. But so as soon as that happens, we've had quite a few offers to buy our credits, not just prospective credits, but vintage credits going back to 2016. So we're looking at entering the market at that time. On Hakim Jeffries, I think we have to share more information with him. I think his constituency is in Brooklyn and Rickford Burke and the others, knowing the racism of Burke, probably gives him a lot of misleading information. I think they don't have, these congressmen don't have time to really study what's going on in these countries. So if he were to examine the facts about Ghana, his comments should be more directed to the PNC and APNU, because they're the only racist party in this country. And if Hakim Jeffries really to examine the facts, that would be his conclusion. So we're hoping that we have an opportunity to present more of those facts. And I can go through the evidence of it, which I don't want to do today, to show this, how this has happened. And so that is what we'll work on. We'll keep working on these things. We've had the same situation before, twice, even when the elections were rigged and the entire world knew the elections were rigged. He had a different view on the matter. He had a PNC view on the matter. And we have to work to ensure that people like Hakim Jeffries and others, they get more information. If it's just, if he's fair, then he would conclude that on his own. If he is not, and it's just something he's doing because he's a friend of Rickford Burke, then we may not be able to change this. We just have to live with it.
Shamar Musa, Guyana Chronicle. We saw that Vice News is expected to air their documentary in a couple days. Additionally, some international media houses have shown interest in Guyana since the discovery of oil. Is there any concern or suspicion that these international media houses might be pushing an anti-China narrative?
I don't know about that. What they will think. There are conspiracy theories around the world, and so you could never really tie it down to a single issue. I know for sure that the international community has always had this view on third world countries, and about any time anything good happens in the developed world, they have a different portrayal of people in Africa, Asia, Latin America as being either can't manage their own resources, they're incapable, therefore they need external help, or they're corrupt. And so that's general. And to get into the US media cycle, you have to prove one of the two. In this particular case, here in Guyana too, we've had this a long time, it's not new. Here for a long time we've had about how we sold out to the Chinese, and we have given them all the forestry. And today we have the lowest forestry, the deforestation rate in the world, in spite of the presence of Chinese companies, American companies, everybody in the forestry sector. We have the lowest deforestation rate in the world, if you look at it. So it is, and through that, for 10 years, when we've had this measure, I was just telling you about the low carbon, our laws are strong on the forestry sector. To touch a single tree, you have to go through a whole process, whether you're an Asian company or not. So they always say, oh, China taking over Africa, getting all the resources and stuff like that. Here on the Vice thing, I played the whole interview. So you just look back at the interview. And I don't expect anything much. The reason I did that, because they have a tendency to cut and take you out of context. I didn't realize that until afterwards I read about Vice, and then when I saw that they even photoshopped a smiling face into a genocide picture. Now in Cambodia, the killing fields, over 1 million people were killed by Pol Pot. I had a friend, I think I related, named Chief in university, told me they were taken out and sent to the village and given a family of 175, not a family, a village, 2 kilograms of rice to eat. He was creating the new man, the Pol Pot, and under this banner of socialism. And he said one night about 4 kids went and to catch some fish, and the soldiers caught them, brought them back, and executed all of them and their families in the village, because they were supposed to eat and live on the 2 kilograms of rice which you used to make into big porridge. Over 1 million people got killed. And then CNN and BBC and the others found that they had taken a smiling face and photoshopped onto the face of the genocide, Vice News. They didn't want to remove it until it became a big cry. So if Vice News will do that sort of thing on a serious thing like genocide, they'll cut and splice. My thing, they can't do that because I released the whole one. So where all the accusations about Sue collecting bribe for me and everything else, everything is there in the public domain. I'm worried about the other people who they may have recorded and they will cut their comments and splice them and all of that. So I just think it is standard. These people will come into our countries, they will go around, they will talk. If you go in there, it's nothing new that they're lobbyists. A man came crying outside the gate a few days ago. 2 persons told him they could arrange a meeting. He gave the food with me. He gave them $100,000. He lost his money. Everybody, I told you we locked up another one, what is his name? Johnny Ramchick. He came, he met me at the oil and gas conference, first time I saw him, but he apparently used to do this outside of Freedom House, downstairs of Freedom House, and I didn't know. He had a nice suit and he said, can I have a meeting with you? He went and collected bribe from a number of people and then brought a guy here too. But before that I found out, so we locked him up. But some people every day that will happen. So what you will find, you will never find like some countries where Vice will go and record somebody taking money, like with me. You'll find probably accused. They said it already in the other interview. That someone. So I'm not gonna pay too much attention. The opposition will use it and some others. But this is about our country too. It looks like we can't take care of our own resources, or we can't, we gotta be corrupt once we're black. That's why I said often it's a blackness in this. So I'm not gonna look at that. And if you saw the interview, look back at the interview. In fact, we should play it back. They didn't even know that projects were publicly tendered. Like the Amila Fall was publicly tendered several times, and they didn't even know that. And a lot of the other projects, they thought, oh, this is how do you get a contract in Guyana? Yeah, look back at the interview. Okay. Yes, please. Go ahead.
Can you stand up?
Yeah, no, sit down with the press conference. You want to get the camera while you're performing. All right, perform. Okay. Oh, you feeling cold? Oh.
Thanks for the invitation.
Okay, all right.
Glenn Lal, right? Yeah. And my first question to you, VP, I've heard your press conference for the very first time, and you have said quite a mouthful. That if I'm to have a discussion with you, it might probably take a couple of years to have this discussion. But my first question to you, you just talked about the extractive industry. The mining contracts. You said you're a serious and caring and transparent government. You were president. Why the nation has not seen or not seeing these contracts? Why they're not being made public? And I have a few other questions that I want to follow up
Okay.
with my report.
So, like, which contract?
The large scale.
All large scale mining.
So, these contracts don't rest with the president. If you go to GRA, every one of these contracts will be a GRA because they all have duty-free concessions. You remember the Baishanlin contract?
Yes.
That people didn't see. It was with GRA. That is why GRA said, here is what you're eligible for, and here's what you're not eligible for. And they had to end up paying more taxes. Every single one of these contracts will be with the agency. It is not just, there is, I don't know now who, because if Ramson is still here, but we passed, just before I left office, a Freedom of Information Act. All you have to do as reporters is to request through that body. I have to find out if Ramson is still functioning. But if you request that, a contract through that body, and you don't get it, then that's a different matter. But it's not, we don't publish the contracts. The contracts are with the agencies. So it might be with the GMC, and it will be because they would sign it, or it will be with GRA. So I think the reporters have to start utilizing more that provision. I'm going to make sure that we discuss this seriously. I'm going to talk to the president that we put in place a mechanism to operationalize, if it's not in place already. I haven't looked at it.
Thank you.
So that is what you should do, and request the contracts.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. You talked about the this gas plant, gas to shore plant. For the first time, the nation is hearing from your mouth that the gas will be free, landed at the gas plant. Now, we haven't heard that this is one of the biggest projects this country will ever embark on because of the price tag it comes with. We haven't have a final figure at the moment. Whatever happened to the feasibility study that can tell this nation, other than word mouth, that this is a viable project? The world, the entire Europe at present, you spoke about the war in Iraq and in Russia and Ukraine. Europe presently is fast-tracking renewables. Just a few days ago, British Petroleum is investing 30 billion in Australia on renewables. Here we have don't have a feasibility study for a gas plant. And we're heading on a transitional node from heavy oil into gas rather than go straight to renewable. What are we, what you have to say?
Okay, so then I would urge you to look at the world. Europe is trying now to not to buy gas and oil from Russia. Europe is now going around the world to try to source more gas and crude oil. Their renewable plants are not keeping pace with their demand. And so they're gonna grow the use of gas and crude oil in the short term. Okay? Secondly, there is no pathway to net zero without using gas as a transitional fuel. Everybody has accepted that now, including the US government, which before COP was not accepting that. Now they have accepted that gas has to be used as transitional fuel. The whole world has now concluded that. You wouldn't find a single voice now doing this. What they want though, they don't want this developed in countries like ours. They want it done, all of the development in the own countries. So that is where the battle is. That is why we argue that if you do what they want, which is to veto these investments abroad, then effectively you're preserving a monopoly for only the existing producers all the way to 2050. And we can't break in. And we need to do it more because of the state of our economies. So it's a justice argument, but the world has accepted that gas is the transition to net zero. There's no pathway now. And that's simply because the growth in demand for energy is like here. The supply of renewable is here. So if the only way you can displace the renewable, or to reintroduce or to introduce renewable energy and displace fossil fuel is if your supply of renewable energy is here, not here. So the demand is here, the supply of renewable is here. It has to come here. And there's not enough investments in the world to move it here. Yes, so I'm just, let me wrap up the whole thing. So I'll come back to this one here. So that is settled now. The gas is a renewable. They accepted it, that gas has to be transitional. Secondly, gas is less polluting than crude oil. So when you move to gas, you also reduce your emissions level significantly because you're not burning bunker C and diesel anymore, which are more polluting. So gas moves you closer to renewable. Thirdly, that the scale, I see a lot talk about using solar. But solar, until now, can't be used as base load. And you know why. Because if the sun doesn't shine for a few days, what happens? And to put in a solar on its own, that's fine. We can afford that. That's what we're gonna do in 35 megawatts of solar we're tendering for now. And we're putting in just about half an hour to 1 hour of storage for the transition. Because if we have to put in storage capacity for 24 hours, we can't afford it. The battery is so expensive, very, very expensive. So solar can't be used as base load. Solar is out. The same thing with wind. Wind blows intermittently. So if it's blowing now, we're fine. But what when it stops blowing? You can't use that. Hydro is, you get the water flowing all the time. So hydro is capacity and energy. But we are having a hard time we can't go forward with a miler now because you know they changed. 2 months ago they wrote us saying they want to change from boot to EPC, and we didn't tender for that. If we gotta go back to tender now a third time. We tried Blackstone, then the PM wrote them after we got into office, and they said 7.1 cents, but we did not go with that. We went out and to public tender. Now it doesn't seem as though we're gonna get this until we go back to tender again. And we don't even know at that time. We tried several times. Especially now that the price of this will come in so low, the gas, but cents per kilowatt hour. So you can't use, I see a lot of people saying, including technical people in your newspaper saying, why the government not going with solar? How would we go with solar? Because what when the sun doesn't shine? What happened?
Yeah.
So I'm coming. So then, on the feasibility side, if you are producing now power at 20 cents per kilowatt hour, that is it, right? 20 cents we are costing us to generate 1 kilowatt of power, and we're selling at 30 cents because when you run it through the lines, we're losing some from the lines and we're losing some commercially. People steal it. So at 30 cents per kilowatt hour, it's still the government barely making money because you lose. If you can get the same power, a kilowatt hour generated at 5 cents US cents per kilowatt hour, down from 20 cents. That in itself is the most feasible thing. And that includes paying back for the pipeline, it includes paying back for the NGL facility and the power plant, and you still generate at 5 cents per kilowatt hour. That is the most feasible thing in the world. Yes, all right, go. Yeah,
Thank you. John Hess, just last week, spoke, and he was boasting about where fossil fuel is as to where renewables are heading. He said very clearly that they will be investing, the fossil fuel investment will require 500 billion on a yearly basis. And renewables, which they must prepare for, because that's the future, in a few years, will carry an investment of $1 trillion to $3 trillion. And I just lay that for you to.
Okay, I didn't follow this, but this looks accurate.
I just lay that for you to get an understanding of where I am coming from.
Sure.
Here you're talking about Guyana is producing per kilowatt 20%. Okay? Now, and we're heading to 5%.
No,
That's
5 cents.
5 cents.
Right?
20 cents, 20
Okay.
cents to 5 cents.
Yes.
Now, but you didn't give us, or you're not telling us, the investment of today as to what,
No.
or how you arrive at 5 cents for the long.
Okay, yeah, but that's what I'm telling you. When you pay back for the pipeline. So that works out to 1.6 cents or something like that.
But my question is, how did we arrive at that when we don't have a cost for the pipeline
Because
and the NGL facility?
Okay, so we're doing estimates. We're saying $1 billion now for the pipeline. That is where we run the numbers. So assuming it comes in at $900 million,
Okay.
then if it comes in, that will come down, the 1.6 cents will come down to maybe 1.4 cents. Right? So it comes down lower. If it goes to 1.1 billion, it may go to 1.7 cents.
The NGL plant is in.
No, that's just the pipeline part, right? So that's why I'm saying the components will be one, right? So one, paying back for the pipeline. First of all, the pipeline. That adds maybe about 1.6 cents. Then if you estimate the power plant and the NGL facility to be about 700 million. in the expression of interest, it ranged between 550, I think, to about 700 million. Now we're going out to bid, we'll see what the real price is. So that will add probably another 1 point something cents per kilowatt hour. So you're paying back for pipeline, NGL, and power plant. And then you add about, say, less than a cent, maybe about 1 cent per kilowatt hour for operating costs. So when you add those up, you're ranging between 4 or 5, with just over 5 cents per kilowatt hour, depending on how things go. It can come down as low as 4 cents to about 5 cents per kilowatt hour. So you're paying back for NGL, this pipeline, the power plant, plus an operative at 5 cents, all of that at 5 cents. To pay back for that over 20 years, you're charging 5 cents, you're gonna be generating power at 5 cents per kilowatt hour. But what we'll get also, remember when we'll get also from the NGL facility all the cooking gas and stuff which we can sell. So you have a revenue too, not just from selling power. If you get at 5 cents, say we lose another 5 cents in transmission and distribution, and you sell at 15, you're making 5 cents per kilowatt hour in profit. So you make a profit on the sale of power and still reduce power prices by 50% for the population. Then you have all these liquids now because you're paying back from the NGL facility or you're paying back from the power sale. So you then don't have an expenditure there because you're paying the operating cost and the capital cost from the sale of power. So then with all of these gas and the cooking gas and stuff, and we have to export some of it, we then sell that, so that's money to the treasury from there. So it covers everything. The cost of the pipeline, the cost of the NGL facility, the cost of the power plant, and operating costs, all included at the 5 cents per kilowatt hour, fixed over 20 years, 4 to 5 cents.
Thank you. Under the coalition government, David Patterson said that the ExxonMobil gave them an estimate for that the pipeline will cost $400 million. Now, it's, according to your figures, $900 million.
You would forgive me.
Please
forgive me if I don't believe Patterson on too many matters. You will forgive me for that, right?
Let's drop David Patterson for that.
Right, yes,
Let's drop his,
yes.
his figure for now, and let's work with your figure.
But Glenn, it's not my figure. It is what, when we go to tender what we get. Everybody can agree to a figure here. Patterson could say $10, I could say $20. It's when you go out to tender, like now we're going out to tender, so we'll know what the market it gives us. So that is when we know. That's why when you plan something, like you plan your project, you will put a notional figure, like an engineer's estimate. And that's the engineer's estimate. So if you're putting up a building, you would get an estimate from the contractor, and the contractor will say, oh, $100 million for the house. I'm going to build or $50 million. But the only time you will know is when you actually, if you put that out to tender, say you're going to get somebody give you an estimate, then another person would say, I can't build it for 50. I will bill it for 70, or I can bill it for 35. So that is how it is. The 1 billion is a planning figure. It could go up, it could come down.
Sir, please.
You understand what I'm saying?
I get you clearly.
Okay.
Could you please elaborate?
Yeah, go on.
I'm just using your figures that you're talking about. We're already at $700 to $900 million for the pipeline. We already at 20 years time span. We're already at a figure, an estimated cost for the entire facility.
No, man, it's 700 to 900 million for the pipeline, man. I didn't say that.
Yeah.
No, I said between when the expressions of interest went out for the building the power plant and the NGL facility, we didn't solicit price because now we're going out, we had to pre-qualify 20-something companies applied. And then they were down to 9 now. So the range that they put in their estimates when they came in at that time was between 550 to 700 million. That is for the NGL and the power plant. That was the range between the bidders. So, but we didn't solicit a price bid. Now we have just gone out, and by July we will get the price bid. So I'm saying that is the planning, that was the range we got. The pipeline, I don't know. We are planning for $1 billion. We don't know whether it will come down or up. And a lot of the pipeline cost is not a full billion offshore. Remember, a lot of work needs to be done on shore and everywhere else. So total. But that's what let's clarify that.
All right, so basically we're looking at 1.5 billion. at
1.5,
least.
1.7.
1.8 billion. Let's leave it there.
Right, yes.
Let's leave it there. Now, over 20-year span, we're looking at.
Mhm.
What that money can do if we go straight to renewables. We eliminate
Oh,
every single headache, risk we have.
Glenn, you yourself read your newspaper. Remember when we were going to Milan and you said, what if the water runs dry there too? What if the place runs dry? How you eliminate the risk? You say the hydrology risk was a major one, that this place gonna run, the river gonna run dry. You recall that?
Sir,
That's not eliminating risk.
Sir, the world is going towards renewable, and this country
No,
is
but
called Guyana.
what-
This country is called Guyana. We
All
are
right, tell me-
in tropical.
All right, tell me what you would invest it in if you had 1.7 billion now. Remember, what would you invest it that would solve the problem definitively? It can't be solar or wind.
We can go hydro,
Yeah.
we can go water, but
Yeah,
not with the Chinese figure.
No,
So
no,
let's go on.
but you know, no, but you know, well, we ain't got no figure now, right? Because
I have another question.
you see when it switch around now, I'm asking you to come up with the ideas now.
I am saying that there are international companies that can come here tomorrow morning and provide more than enough electricity for this entire country with a signed agreement from above. There are many.
Let me
is
tell
with
you, let me
oil.
tell you something, Glenn. I've been inundated, since this whole Sioux affair. I stopped really seeing people. I really stopped seeing people, but I've been inundated with a lot of these companies. They come here, they all got a proposal. I've been very liberal before that in like meeting companies and stuff, but half of these people are crooks. They just come and they're working something behind, they think they can work behind the deal. So my point is, they come in, they want a power purchase agreement. But guess what they want? For the lowest on hydro, from solar, and this is without battery, 8.8 cents per kilowatt hour, without battery. So they just want to put in the panels and tie it into the grid. They're all these big companies, they want to put in the panels and tie it into the grid. They don't want, so if you have, you can only use it during the day. You can't use it at night because it's daytime. You don't have any storage. So that, and they want 8.8 cents per kilowatt hour. You're right, there are 20, 40 companies that come down. Every day they're lining up to meet you and they all have some proposal for you. And we can't go down that route because it doesn't make sense. And when you chase them off, they get upset with you. The government is not open to investments, etc. So I have no doubt you will find companies. But let's look at this realistically. Who will give us, if you could find a company that could give us a 5 cents per kilowatt hour, a solar system that can run with battery storage, tomorrow I'll sit down with you and talk about this.
How about I throw that back to you, Mr. Vice President? Are you going to guarantee this country that the gas to shore plant will generate at 5 cents per kilo?
Yeah, I just went through the numbers with you, and the price, that's why we're building in we don't want an inflationary escalation because, you know, in every contract you build in inflation. So we want a price fixed throughout the life of the contract.
I just throw it back.
Right, so no, but the government, what I can guarantee you, that we will cut the price once this project comes in by 50% your electricity bill for every citizen of this country that's connected to the grid will come down by 50%. I can guarantee that.
But sir, that would be 15 cents.
Yeah, exactly, but the government needs to make money too to expand the system. You gotta make some money too. Everywhere we go in the rural areas and stuff, people still not connected to the grid. Every year the government puts money into the system. So you get a 50% reduction, and then GPL will then take some of this money that they make after giving you a 50% reduction and start improving the grid. The grid has to change too. That's on the generation side. So we need to build a modern grid. Right now, the transformers blow out. You can't distribute the power carefully and stuff. So you get a 50%. It's not that the company should make some money too.
Mr. Vice President, with all due respect, sir, you cannot ask me to bring in an investor to supply electricity at 5 cents per kilowatt to this country when you are going to give this country a reduction of 50%, which takes the citizens to 15%.
Yeah, but listen, but they gotta sell it not to the citizens, they gotta sell to the country, because would they distribute, if that company had to come in and distribute the power alone and face the commercial and technical losses, you know what it will be? Anyhow,
Can we just touch back on one?
All right, yes, we're now reaching agreement here.
Royalties. I heard you talked about the royalties when Kiana asked if it's recoverable. I didn't hear you very good.
Yeah, but that's why I gave an explanation. I have not looked at this matter carefully, so I don't want to give a venture. That's the last thing I do.
But
Venture.
sir, that's the most important thing. That's what this country
Right.
depends on.
I'll look at it.
Now,
I'll give you that.
may I ask how the oil companies are taking out the problem? What method they are using to arrive at sharing our profit?
So the thing is that it is, according to the PSC, it's 75% goes towards cost oil, 25% goes to profit oil. We get 50% of that. So we end up with 12.5% of gross. And then we get another 2% percentage point on top of that for royalty. So we end up with 14.5% of gross.
What are some of the costs we are talking about?
Well, the cost.
The investment?
Yeah, but all the investment costs will go up to be compensated from the cost oil. And it goes up to a maximum of 75%. So even if they invest more or less in a particular year, it doesn't mean that in that year you would have a reduction of the 14.5%, because there is a cap to how much they can use for compensating costs for that year, and that's up to 75%. So the 75% cap is not dependent on their spending for that year or the magnitude of the spending.
And may I ask how that is not our debt? When the money is coming out to pay that debt from our oil, and still that is not our debt. May I ask that?
No, but you said every citizen of this country in your paper owes $9 million.
Yes, sir.
And I think I'm a citizen of this country.
You
I
owe
don't
$9
owe no $9 million dollars. You might owe that. But I don't owe no $9 million. I don't know if Kwame McCall you owe $9 million. Kwame would say no good. So we don't owe no $9 million because the government of Guyana has not guaranteed paying back to any investor money lost or gained from their investment in the oil and gas sector. When the citizen, the debt becomes a burden on the citizen, is when the debt is contracted by or guaranteed by the state. Only then it becomes a burden on the people, guaranteed by or contracted by the state. In this case, no such guarantee is extended to any debts that the Exxon has. So we don't owe any money. If they can't pay it back, then they can levy on the assets of the company, the investors, but not on the treasury, not on the consolidated fund. So that is why we don't owe no money. That's wrong, that to say we all owe this money. So that's clear.
Mr. VP, we are already burdened with that debt. When every day they take out money from our oil, we are already burdened with that debt, sir.
No, man, you got two things. All right, you're confusing. All right, listen. So you were talking about the debt we owe as citizens. We don't owe no debt, so that's wrong. The paper, every Guyanese owe $9 million. That's wrong, totally wrong. We don't owe that. Now we're talking about the more debt that a company takes, then it reduces basically our money to some extent. But the more debt that a company takes too, we believe that they can, if you invest it wisely, and we don't think these people are stupid, they're here to make money. The more they invest, the bigger our share gets. So it's not like a risky venture. Imagine, so you're not Exxon, you're not a company X, and you spend, say, $500 million, and you don't find oil, or you find oil, but it's not commercial quantity. So you can't move on to an agreement now to develop. We don't owe you a cent. You lose every cent of the 500 million. Remember, you can't recover it from production like what Exxon did from 1999, all their expenses. The only way you can recover is if you actually start producing. If you explore and you don't find, the state has no liability. So the risks are all yours if you're investing, all yours. If you lose, if you can't develop a project, you lose all your money, 500 million US. Some companies have already lost hundreds of millions of US dollars. If you move on to develop now, then you can recover your costs. So Exxon has already 11 billion proven barrels. The risk now of exploring, like with the others, not so great because they're developing what's already proven. And there is a huge market for it at a lucrative price. So to the extent they develop that, our share becomes larger. So a 14% of $120 million, 120 million barrels a day is significantly less than 14% of a 1 billion barrel a day. But to get to the 1 million barrel a day, you gotta invest. So it costs about $30 billion for the 4 FPSOs alone. I pointed this out when I was on your program with you, that is 10 times more than we have in our total banking system in Guyana. So somebody gotta raise the money to put in there. So that is what I'm saying here. To the extent they invest, we are not guaranteeing any of the debt. So if they fail, they fail, fine. But we don't want them to fail, because if they succeed, borrow and invest, our share of the pie doesn't get bigger than 14.5, but because it's a growing pie, we get more money. Right?
I think you missed one point, sir.
Okay. Oh, 1 minute.
Exploration investment is on the oil company's risk. That's a risk they are
Yeah,
taking,
yeah.
sir. Production of oil, sir, is where they're investing to recover
Yeah.
money from our oil. So it's our debt, sir.
Oh man,
With that, I
it's your
rest my
debt,
case.
not my debt, as far as
With
I'm
that,
concerned.
I rest
No,
my
no.
case, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Not our debt, I'm not acknowledging no debt like that, we don't have to pay that, yeah, please.
Just two quick things. Firstly, the $5 billion allocation that was made for relief measures, can you say if that entire sum was already used? And also if you can say if the government is exploring other relief measures, given that prices are still increasing?
Yeah, sure.
Firstly, and secondly, can you say if we've had any progress on resolving the licensing issue with Suriname?
For the latter one, level with Foreign Ministry Agriculture, but I don't see any evidence of progress there thus far. And the first one, no, the money has not been exhausted as yet. And so there are different groups that are being targeted, but the resources have not been exhausted. What was?
Can you say what else the government is exploring? What other
Oh,
relief
okay,
measures?
because this is an ongoing thing. We're constantly like we recently removed the tax on lube oil. We did 14%. Whilst we remove everything on gas and diesel, right? The 50% excise tax. We then started looking at what else people use in vehicles to transport. We found lube oil, we removed that. So it's an ongoing thing. As we find items, we are gonna try to adjust prices downward. We're really hoping that you will have an improvement in the supply response in these countries, but some of them are still locked down because of the COVID, the factories, etc. We have another issue now, capital equipment. We are trying to get some bulldozers, excavators for these farm-to-market roads and canals. We're ordering now, they said lead time till next year. You know, so it is a tough period. There is very little that you can do. Look at the US, they with their might and they have a rough time tackling supply responses. So we're gonna keep working through this to see how we can help vulnerable groups as we go along. And one way of doing this too, this is outside of the $5 billion, right? That was set aside. We're gonna probably spend another $5 or $6 billion for employing people. So that's another $5-6 billion that will go in people's pockets. Now that's 15,000 persons now, 10 to 15,000 ultimately by next year we're looking at the target. So it means that we're trying to supplement income at the lower level, at the household level, so people can address some of these cost of living issues. But it's really, really affecting a lot of people. Like the price of cooking oil, there's nothing you can do, more than double. And lots of things. So we have to really produce a bit more, but we're lucky to some extent because we still consume a lot of what we produce. But some countries are in a sad state, like the Caribbean. They don't produce much. Everything from our meat to our vegetables, our rice, almost everything, our fish, we get right here.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, you can. But that's why we're moving. So yeah, it's an ongoing task. It's an ongoing thing. As we meet, if you read what the Minister of Finance said, that we're setting aside a sum of money in the budget, but we will consult. And so as we consult with different interest groups, we're trying to do stuff. So we met with the fishermen, we met with people from the hinterland, we met with the farmers, so we keep going. We're meeting with all the folks. The president met with people with disability. So as we meet with different groups, we try to extend the help through consultations.
Foreigner.
Let him write first.
Okay, just two issues I wanna know on. In the Yellowtail license, there's a new provision that talks about the low carbon development strategy. It asks the partners to produce a study for the minister on how they can contribute to the low carbon development strategy. And it mentions, for example, renewable projects. Is the government thinking of asking these oil companies to undertake renewable energy projects and such for Guyana? That's one. And on the gas to energy project, you mentioned 70 to 80 million figure for NGLs. You said it was an estimate of how much we could get.
Yeah, but
annually.
I didn't want, it goes a big range, but very high. I have adjusted most of the figures until the numbers come out, so then you will have the fixed range, but I'm not,
Okay, fine.
I'm just giving you an idea of what it can generate for the country.
So you said that the pipeline will be funded through cost oil, but have you gone any closer to sorting out the financing for the NGL facility and the power plant?
No, the NGL and the power plant is clearly government. The NGL, we are now discussing the financing.
Okay.
And there are two options. The government can own it outright, or it could be funded under the same principles like the pipeline.
Okay. And the first question about the LCD.
Oh, the LCDS, we hope that everyone, including the oil companies operating here, would move to cutting edge technology in their sector. That's the first thing. And secondly, we're hoping they can contribute to the fight against climate change. We've authorized them to do a study on carbon capture and storage. And then thirdly, if we, being here, we believe that they can make a contribution to our target for decarbonizing the energy sector, which means investing in renewable resources and stuff over time. So we're hoping that they have to be part of the low carbon development strategy. That's our overarching guide in Guyana. Yes.
Can foreigners come to Guyana and use our banking system, borrow to buy properties, or to invest in this country? And the reason I ask that because this country has been growing, and the American dollar, so the foreign currency still remains the same at one stagnant price.
Yeah, so if the demand, often you look at the price of the currency is a consequence of the demand and the supply. Now, often in markets like ours, where the markets are very shallow and fragmented, you don't have equilibrium in this area reached based on those principles. It could be adjusted, distorted a bit. However, it is a careful, just to avoid the Dutch disease, what I spoke of at the beginning. Everyone, including your newspapers, has been warning about. We have to pay careful attention. We cannot allow the currency to strengthen Guyana dollar too rapidly. It will kill the manufacturing and agriculture sector.
Can the foreigners?
Yeah, so now that's at one
That's
man,
like-
right? So that is why. But there has been a greater supply to the market of foreign currency, but greater demand too, because what has happened is, a lot of construction demand and stuff, what's happening out there in the market. So we're trying to keep the demand and the supply, watch it carefully. Let me just put that in a simple way. We're just watching it carefully.
Is the foreigners allowed to come
So
here?
yes, so foreigners, if you go to the US, you may be able, and we have an open economy, you can borrow from a US bank once you have a company incorporated in the US.
But our laws are very clear on that, sir.
Yeah, they get permission to, they get permission from the minister.
Well, then, I don't think we are running business in this country.
Well, all right, but the thing is that they're borrowing, most of them are borrowing, and that's why I'm saying that a lot of people are trying to bypass this local content legislation. So if they're borrowing, the banks too want to lend to a lot of these people because they make money by lending. Banks make money by lending, not by taking your deposits and sitting on them. They are looking for any project. They don't discriminate against who the borrower is once it's a solid project. So I would prefer maybe people don't come here, they bring in capital to borrow. But the reality is that people do come and sometimes they do borrow here. Are you saying that we shouldn't allow any company?
Into real trouble.
All right, so I see your
And I
point
can see
there.
that we are heading to real trouble.
So you're in
Because-
favor of prohibiting everyone?
Because if, for say Bharrat Jagdeo come from Trinidad and Tobago to invest in my country, Bharrat Jagdeo should bring his own money here. Bharrat Jagdeo should not bring his money, come here to use our banking system to make money off of the poor people of this country. Meaning, and
Yeah.
I asked this question because I've seen it clearly in one case where a Bharrat Jagdeo came from Trinidad.
No,
Just
use
recently-
another man, no, use
All right.
Kwame McCoy.
Kwame McCoy.
Kwame McCoy came from
Kwame
Trinidad.
McCoy
Next thing somebody actually write it and clip it, right? And it and put it. All right, use another name, boy, don't use
All right.
Kwame, next thing they'll believe is
As
Kwame.
Glenn Lal come from
Right, yes,
Trinidad,
okay, yeah.
bring in $1 million, invest in Kaicho News. But build a Kaicho News. 2 months after, pledge that Kaicho News to the bank, receive his for $1 million, collect his $1 million, send it back to his bank account in Trinidad. So he hasn't invested anything. The Guyana money is investing for him.
Glenn,
He's making money
I
off them.
understand the concern, I understand it, but when you operate an open economy, in most countries, there are no restrictions on borrowing based on nationality. They're based on the project. So it's up to the bank to secure good projects and to make money available to people. So it's not based on nationality. If that's the case, a lot of our people may not be able to borrow if they, like you go and invest in the US. You have a company here, they can do the same thing, and Guyanese going into the US would be able to do the very same thing. Now, I understand the point about people bringing in money if they're coming here. I understand that point fully, and as a Guyanese, I subscribe to that. But as Vice President and member of the government, it's a different issue. When you run a country and an economy, you can't make these prohibitions. If we do that, then if there is no reciprocity, it may be involved. Now let me tell you something else we've done. We've recently licensed a merchant bank, and you've seen that. That is why we did not license so far. Since I was at the Ministry of Finance, we have not issued a new commercial bank license. Because the ones that are, because that means if you issue a commercial bank license from a company from abroad, a bank, they will come here and take Guyanese deposits and could put our deposits at risk. We've licensed a merchant bank where they can only bring money into the country. They're non-depository taking institution. So they can't collect deposits from Guyanese. They can only bring in money to lend to people, right? And that's why we said publicly we're going to be a bit more liberal on issuing licenses for merchant banks. But for 20 odd years, There's not a new commercial bank license issued to any new company, not a new bank, because of the very same reason. And we saw that happening in Jamaica in the 80s and 90s. They issued so many commercial bank licenses, they balkanized the sector, and the government that's when the government ended up with the debt, because they couldn't allow back the depositors to lose their money. And the government of Jamaica ended up having to pay near $3 billion over a period. It sapped growth in that country for a long while. So we've been very cautious on these commercial banks. You were back at putting our own depositors' money at risk.
Taking out, sir, taking out our foreign currency, reducing our foreign currency is adding higher cost of living in this country. Because if the US dollars is reduced, then a tin of milk that you pay 5,000 can go down to 4,000, 5 to 2,000.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah.
But the law of Guyana
but
states
no,
states
but
it clear.
it sounds simple like that, but what happens to the exporter? The people who send their rice or the other stuff abroad.
Look at what we are.
But look at that. What it kills the industry. And you don't need me to, you write about it in your newspapers every day.
Yes.
About the Dutch disease. That is precisely the Dutch disease. And in the long run, it doesn't kill your productive sector. Then you worry about cost of living in the long run. Just look, your paper writes about this almost every day, about this Dutch disease and avoiding it. What you're suggesting to me will take us straight into the Dutch disease. All right.
One more question.
All right,
One
last
question.
one. Yes, last one. Yeah.
Last question. The US increased their royalty rates in December. They are now slapping on a 50% one-off tax. They're about to do that. Britain did the same thing. Canada raised their royalty rates on a sliding scale system from 5 to 40%. They have no different of a contract than that of Guyana.
Oh, really? They have a very different. They have a very no. That's where you went wrong. You were accurate up to that point.
Sorry.
Up to that point.
Sir, we have a parliament. And I don't think Guyanese people want to hear sanctity of contract. Because I personally don't want to hear that.
All right.
We have a parliament. And I've seen you talk a lot about opposition and opposition and opposition. I'm going to leave here this afternoon with a good vibe.
Okay.
That both you, as part of the government and the opposition, get your acts together and move to the parliament and bring about changes. Payara has gone, Youngtail has gone, the renewal of Lisa 1 permit has gone, without we even getting the taxes. The taxes that from the oil that will be coming up from Payara
And you will listen to me at all through this whole press conference, yes. At the end, you're making a closing speech as a politician, Glenn. All right, thank you very much. That was the politician, Glenn, closing the press conference. Thank you very much.